Hi everybody, my name is Valana Wynn. I'm also known as Lady V. For those of you that are familiar with me at Safe House of the Desert, this is our virtual art class, and so today what I'm going to be teaching you guys is how to make a ring using craft wire and semi-precious stones. You know, before we get started on making a ring, what I want to tell you about is the beauty of being able to self-sustain. If you can make your own jewelry, you can teach your brothers, your sisters, your mom, and you can actually start a cottage business. So a cottage business would be something you do from home and you put it online, or you are able to sell it to friends to make money. So today's lesson is a simple ring making technique that I use at Safe House of the Desert with our Skills Lab class. And today I'm going to share that with you so that you have the knowledge too. Okay, so the first thing that you will need is you're going to need some tools. And I'm going to bring the camera down so you can see the tools that we're working with. So on the table, what I have is I have a pair of wire cutters. Okay, whoops, there we go, it's in the camera. We have a ring mandrel. We have round nose pliers, we have flat nose pliers, and we have another smaller set of flat nose pliers. So let me tell you a little bit about these tools that we're working with. In addition to the tools, you're going to have what we call rolls of craft wire, and I'm going to tell you about this in a minute in more detail. And you're going to be working with stones. So today we're working with a super beautiful pink quartz stone. So we'll play with that a little bit in just a second. But let's talk about the tools and the safety of the tools and what they do. So let me bring the camera back up. There I am. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the tools. So first of all, this tool here, this is a wire cutter. Now I want you to notice something. You notice that the blades of the tool go up, and if you turn it over, they go down. When you're cutting a piece of wire, it's really important that when you cut, you're cutting in the down position into the table and you're covering it with your hand as you're cutting. Here's why. If I cut with the wire with the blades up, what happens is it cuts and it ejects wire out into the space that you're working in. Now, if you're working with someone, that could put somebody's eye out. So the first rule of safety with working with these particular wire cutters is that you cut downward into the table, okay? Here's the next thing we've got. This is a ring mandrel. A ring mandrel has, if you look real close, it has US sizing here on the top. And it's going to tell you all the ring sizes that are on the finger. I think it goes all the way up into like 13 or something. So what you're going to do is, what we don't have in this shot is there is a circular disc that you'll have that literally will tell you your ring size. And when you find out your ring size, you'll actually wrap your wire onto this particular ring mandrel on the size and number that matches your finger, okay? And we'll go into that a little bit when we do the demonstration. For right now, I just want to talk about tools. These are flat nose pliers. Notice how the tips of them are flat and square. They're used for pulling. They're used for flattening, okay? That's what these are. These guys are great. They're my favorite tool because you can't hurt yourself, which is great. These are round nose pliers. What I want you to notice that the back end of them is larger than the tip, okay? So when you're making rings, these are used to do curls. And we do curls, and we'll show this in the demonstration when I'm making the jewelry. If we pretended this was a lock and this was a key, you put the key to the lock and watch my wrist. You curl. You unlock it or you lock it. This is the ring. This is actually the wrist movement that you'll be doing when you grabbed a piece of wire on that ring and we're going to make a curl. It's this type of movement, okay? But we'll come back to that. So now let me tell you a little bit about the wire we're using. There's 3 types of wire we use. This is 16 gauge wire. 16 gauge wire is really, really strong. It's bendable, but it's really strong. Then there is 18 or 20 gauge wire. And this, see how this is much more easy to bend, right? Okay. And then there is 24 gauge, which is all over the place, right? We use these 3 different wires for the 3 different usage. The thing about wire is the larger the number, the smaller the gauge of wire. It's completely different than anything else, right? So just remember, if it's 24 gauge wire, it's a very thin wire. And if it's 16 gauge wire, it's really hard and it'll challenge your hands. But we're going to make projects where you use all 3 types of wire, and it'll be really fun and you're going to like it, okay? So the next thing that we're going to be bringing into our awareness today is I've got some different beads here. These guys, and I'm going to bring the camera down again, okay? So these, if you can see them, there we go. These 3 beads, I'm not sure of the millimeter of the bead, but it's fairly large. If you put it on the finger, you know, it looks pretty big, okay? So our first project we'll do is we'll work with a larger bead. When you get to know how to make the ring, you can use smaller beads, but it gets harder. We're going to work with beads today for a ring, and we're going to work with what these are. These are called slab. This is slab semi-precious stones. This is lapis, and this is turquoise. This is quartz. That's lapis. Every one of the stones we work with at Safe House are, you know, healing stones. The same thing with the beads for the rings. But these we'll make necklaces out of. And then we're going to be working with a raw crystal, and you guys will have those raw crystals in your materials. You'll want to get some if you don't have them already. And we're going to wrap this using actually a piece of toilet paper and wire, so you get a really cool finish on your wire wrapping. And this will be a whole separate thing. So the materials we're also working with are 2 small crystals or 2 small beads. And we can make earrings out of those using what we call the findings. These are earring wires. Whoops, here we go. These are earring wires. And the thing about these guys is that there is a hook at the end, okay? There's a loop. So when we're working with these guys, whoops, losing it here, you're going to be loading your beads on this wire and making sure that hook is on the bottom. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, okay? These guys are hook onto those earring posts with a hook. You recognize this? This goes into your ear. So these are the materials we're working with. We're also working with belly beads, and these beads go with the necklaces, and I'm going to show you how we use those as well. So the types of rings we're making can be very simple to very, very complex types of rings. Here's some examples of, this is a free-form ring that you can make out of craft wire. Really cool stuff. Looks really neat on the body. This is really easy to make, and I'll teach you guys how to do that in a separate video. Okay. And then this is what the necklaces look like when we finish them with those, remember those slab pieces I showed you? Remember this was the raw piece? This is what they turn into when we add, these belly beads to them. So each project's really doable, it's really easy to do, and it just requires a little bit of patience. Remember when I was talking about that one wrapped crystal, the solid one? This is what that can look like, where it has wrapped wire all the way around it. Okay? When we're making jewelry and necklaces, this is called a shank. okay? This is what the necklace goes through, the chain goes through in order to make your necklace stand on the body, okay? So that's a little bit about what we're going to be working with in terms of the jewelry making. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to making a ring, just a simple ring based on our materials we have here on the table. So the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need about, goodness, 6 or 8, well, first thing you're going to need is you're going to need about 6 or 8 inches of wire. This is 20 gauge wire, okay, so remember it's kind of bendable. The first thing you'll be doing is finding out what is the size of your finger. And so you'll be putting your finger in, there should be purple loops that are on a chain that you'll put on, and you'll put it on until you find the right fit, and that will allow you to know what number you are. So what you're going to use first is we're going to use this howlite. I don't know if you can see that on this table. Let me see. How about that? Can you see it? There we go. So you're going to use this howlite bead, and we're going to use some wire. We're going to use these cutters, and these other tools will also come into play as we go forward. Okay, so this is all the stuff we're working on right now. So here's the first step, you guys. You're going to take your 6-8 inches worth of wire and you're going to put it through the bead. And as you put it through the bead, what you want to do is you want to get to the very center. So you want this bead to be centered so that there's wire on either side that's equal, okay? So we're going to pick that up, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bend that down just like this. And then I'm going to bend it down on the other side just like that, so I make this kind of shape. Can you do that? Okay. This stabilizes the bead so that it's easier to work with. Now, here's the next part. If you drew an imaginary line between this wire and that wire, in your mind, if you put your fingernail right on the bottom, see how my fingernail's right on the bottom of this bead? I don't want it to go too far up. You want it right on the bottom. And if I drew an imaginary line with my fingernail to the other side, it would be right on the other side. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to bend that up and we're going to make an L, okay? Now I'm going to turn this around. And I'm going to bend it up, find my placing, bend it up. So now your wire looks like this, okay? It's real important that right here, let me just see, let me get something to point with here. It's real important that this area right here is really close to the bottom of the bead. If it's longer, it'll give you problems. So you want to make sure that this L is very, very short. Okay? All right. Here's our next thing, what we're going to do. We're going to find our number. Let's say we're a 7. I'm going to find the number 7. And I'm going to put my bead right on the number 7. And I'm going to put my thumb on it, just like this. Here's our next step. As you hold on to that, you're going to bend this wire around the ring mandrel and go straight up. So I have this shape, okay? Here's the next step. I'm going to bend the other wire and go all the way around. And I'm going to go straight up. Same thing. You want to get this wire real tight on the ring mandrel. You don't want to have a lot of space here. You want it to be as tight as possible. Then what you're going to do is you're going to put one wire on one side and one wire on the other, so it looks like that. Okay? Now, here's the fun part. If you can imagine you're a cat, you're chasing around the bottom of this bead, and let's say this is a dog, and that's chasing around the bottom of the bead, chasing after the cat. We're going to chase these wires all the way around. All the way around, and we're going to leave just a little bit of wire. And notice that this is underneath the bead. See how it's underneath the bead? See if we can get that for you. Okay. It's not on top of the bead, it's underneath the bead. And here's our next step. Remember we talked about the key and the lock? So let's pretend that this is the lock, and here's the key. So when I go in, I'm going to go, first of all, if this is too long, you can cut it. And this is when these cutters come in handy. When you cut your wire again with the blade down, you're going to cut it and you're going to catch it. Let it go. I'm going to cut it a little bit closer and I'm going to catch it and let it go. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that key, pretend this key is going in, pretend this wire is the lock at the very, very tippy tip. And I'm going to grab it real tight and I'm going to turn it. Now, you may have to turn it a couple of times, okay? But the end result is that you close that circle. So I'm going to do it on the top here. Sometimes it's easier for you to be able to turn the ring mandrel upside down to work on it. It depends on, you know, if you're a lefty or a righty. But here again, see we have this wire. So I'm going right for the very tip of that wire. Here we go. And watch my wrist. I am turning it, I'm clamping it, and I'm turning it into a circle. Okay? Now you see how this is open a little bit? You want to close that, because otherwise it's just going to catch on all your clothes and it becomes a real pain in the butt. So this is a basic ring. Now, what you can do is if you don't like these hanging out here with this circles as a design, let's see, we'll take a look at it. So we put it on the finger and let's see how it looks. So one thing you can do is if this bothers you, you can bring that wire up onto the stone. And how you do that is you would take a flat nose plier, you would clamp it and twist it, and then push it in and mold it onto the top. See if you can see that. See how it's molded onto the bottom of that bead? We're going to do the same thing here. See how this is clamped? You turn it up, and then you push it, and then you can bend it into the bead. So now these circles or these curls are more of a decorative element on the bead itself. And you can press them in. So what we have is we have a really simple, beautiful ring that looks great on. It's cute. You know, the key to this is, see how round this is? You want to, the tighter that wire is that goes around the ring mandrel, you'll get this really great looking band. If you find your band is all jacked up and all messy, just put it on the ring mandrel and do this a few times, and it will true it up to make it nice and round. So that's our first step of making a simple ring. You can follow this step by step. Make sure you have all your tools. We use 20 gauge wire. This is actually amzionite is what we used this morning. Amzionite is a healing stone. It's grounding and make you feel like you are connected. So this is Ringmaking 101 with Lady V. And so I'm going to bring the camera up. So if you get stuck, you can have your teacher talk to me, reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to help you. But for this moment of now, this is a great way to learn, and it's also something you can do to make money. And that's what we teach in Skills Lab in the desert, and that's what we're going to teach you whenever you watch this video, is how to make some money using rings. We have a low budget in terms of materials, and you can have a reasonable cost to sell it for, and then you eat, and that is the whole idea why we created this. Okay, enjoy the lesson.